is sidewalks. Cities are incurring larger and larger liabilities on the sidewalks through claims and general concern with safety of the citizens. The sidewalks are aging, and they are hazards, trip and falls, those kinds of things. So we, a very green perspective. We use a bicycle, and we mount a GPS computer that's GIS based on some of the Esri technologies. And the student we have a student every year that cycles the entire city network of sidewalks. It's over 1,000 kilometers of cycling in summer, covering 640 kilometers of our sidewalks. And that student, the computer system tracks what is getting done, so he knows exactly when the inspection happened. And the student also identifies specific defects, what kind of defects they are, the severity and the extent of those. Those automatically get uploaded into our system, into the GIS systems as a registry of defects. Those defects then automatically, based on some analytics that we do, those that are of higher severity, the highest risk to our citizens and likely to cause a safety issue, those automatically transfer into the work management systems through the IBM systems, IBM Maximo, and they queue up to our repair crews and contractors. They get done within a few weeks of being identified. And the system, the analytics, also then monitors those statuses to make sure that we're getting those defects repaired in a timely manner. And so not only does that eventually improve the state of our sidewalks, it helps us defend claims when claims happen to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. And we've already seen over the last 4 years of doing this, we are seeing a very gradual but marked improvement in overall sidewalks.
So it seems like you measured and you quantified your activities. Obviously, working in a city, the challenge is budget.
Yes.
So how did you go about bringing together the folks that would help with setting forth the budget, then quantifying that, and then go to work and collecting the monies or allocating the monies that allowed for this program to put in place? Then how are you showing that return to the stakeholders, to the folks that are actually living every day in the city of Cambridge?
Timing is part of that answer. We were fortunate that we started this whole initiative at the time where some external funding opportunities came up. In Canada here, we've had the federal gas tax money coming from the federal government levels, where there's been allocations to every municipality based on their populations. Timing was just perfect for us because we already had a start. We already had a known list of issues. We already had a plan in place, but we were short on funding. That federal gas tax money that came in that was just acknowledged a few weeks ago by our minister, Gary Goodyear, has been a fantastic input for us. We've been able to leverage those finances to help implement technologies, to help pull all these things together. It helped us gain the knowledge of our infrastructure through condition assessments and actual physically inspecting underground systems through robotic technologies, and bring all that information together. So, an example, we've had $12 million over the last few years on gas tax. About 35% of that $12 million has been allocated towards the technologies and the knowledge side of things. And not all municipalities realize that that's an opportunity that really can help us overall. And that's been great. So not only has the gas tax funded this overall perspective and knowledge, we've also been able to make good strides on the infrastructure itself. Because we now have more knowledge of where the issues are, we've been able to prioritize that. 65% of that money has gone to actual renewal of water systems and roads and things like that. We've had other sources. I think the screen may show some of the provincial surpluses we've had over the last couple of years. They don't exist right now, but they did exist in the past few years. And again, timing was everything. We were able to tap into that and pretty much eliminate almost all the backlog of our road infrastructure needs, provincial and through the stimulus funding.
Now, I know we're here talking because the city of Cambridge was recognized as a smart city. How did you go down the path of actually choosing technology? Where did you learn about the technology? And where did you gather the insights that allowed you to apply your everyday needs, the city's needs, the citizens' needs in a way that made sense from technology? And then how did you engage in that technology discussion to implement the right infrastructure your department needs to supply these services?
We followed a fairly standard approach. And I know technology in particular is difficult to implement. We took a very best practices approach to that, where we did a lot of homework up front. We spent about 8 months to a year walking through all of our business processes that are related to infrastructure. We walk through, there's a saying, follow the paper from start to end. Find out where the paper starts and find out where it actually ends up. And often that meant crossing traditional silos, because sometimes that piece of paper ends up with someone and they say, well, this is how I do it because that's how the last people did it and that's how it seems to work. You need to go beyond that. So we followed the paper, so to speak, or the red tape or whatever you want to call it. We followed those processes right from the very start. How did this issue get identified? Where did it end up? Who sees all of it? What does finance see? Every little piece. And we dissected all of those and then reassembled those into fairly standard processes. And using those, then we were able to create scenarios, standardized workflow scenarios and processes that covered all of our needs in the department. Only then, once we had that in place, did we actually go for an RFP.
Okay.
And that RFP was an open RFP to all vendors in the industry, of which we ended up choosing the IBM Maximo solution for the work management systems.
And how has that helped you in the reporting and keeping the stakeholders on side by putting in a system that was standards-based, that you went out there and now you've put it in place? How are you able to report this on a daily basis to actually show ongoing benefits?
Number of ways. It's a real-time system. Virtually everyone in this department, certainly in the operations side, they use the Maximo or the work management system every minute of their lives. When they first started they were, they operated this city based on their experience, their knowledge, which was great. It served the city very well. But it meant that two different people didn't always have the same knowledge. They've now come to realize that all the information is in the system. We no longer rely exclusively on the historical knowledge built up in our experienced people. Mm-hmm. They now go to the system. The system tells them what information's there, when was the last thing that occurred there, what's the status of those things. So people really see that benefit now because they don't have to wait to find someone's being available to actually be able to respond to these issues. So that's a real-time benefit that people really now are seeing. The other part too, we're all using common terminology and common processes, which never happened before. So putting a computer system in that follows those standard workflows and those same processes, we're all on the same page. So we understand what happens when we have 300 outstanding job tickets. We all know what that means. When we have, when we completed 200 last week, we also know what that means. We have lots of reports now that show metrics on by program, so we know exactly what it cost us to respond to a snowstorm, how many people it took, how many hours it took, how much overtime we spent on those things. We've also started using that information to help reallocate some of the overtimes, looking at using external resources to reduce some of our internal overtimes. So that knowledge we now gain through those kinds of systems give us the opportunity, give us the means to look at where the best opportunities are, and we're starting to be able to use that now.
Do you feel like technology's really helped you bridge a gap between what research shows is the aging workforce in cities and younger people coming in and actually engaging and being part of the community?
Yeah, absolutely, and that was one of the objectives that we had on the very onset of this, and that was one of the things that actually did come to the forefront but wasn't spoken of as much at senior levels. We have in Cambridge a very experienced group of people. Some of these staff have been here 25, 30, 35 years. They know this city extremely well. They did not need a system because they already knew everything about the system. They knew how to manage it. But it was recognized the corporation needed the system because sooner or later those people were going to retire. And that knowledge, that intrinsic knowledge they had was in their heads, and we knew it would walk out the door. So again, timing was everything. We were able to put this system in place before those key people retired. In fact, most of those people are still here today for a couple of years. Some of them have already left. But it's already shown that through the field verification, of the inventory itself, some of the most experienced people have been able to input all their knowledge. Without those people providing that input, that knowledge would have been lost, and we'd still be looking for some of this infrastructure underground. Our guys that do the day-to-day operations, they know how to do these things, but now they can go on vacation because the system will automatically create a work order next week for the things that need to be done next week, and the manager can now go on vacation. Before that wasn't possible because the manager had to be there to direct the staff to do that kind of things. The system now knows what needs to be done, when it needs to be done for routine activities, and it really takes the load off the managers and our management levels so that things can just happen with or without that particular individual. That certainly will play out and pay us back in spades as we see these retirements happen over the next few years.
One really interesting thing, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, was during the years you're going through this process. So, what were some of the biggest surprises with regards to the people and the adoption of the systems over the years that you've seen personally?
It was interesting. I was talking to one of our managers yesterday, and one of these managers was not a computer user at all. And if you go into an operations environment, you will typically find a number of those staff are not computer users. They probably don't even like emails. They were really worried about these kinds of systems. And this particular individual was the most concerned over this kind of thing. And he was one of these people that, he knew the system, he knew the city very well, he operated a very good team in the area of the road side of things. But he had to be here every single day to be able to deploy these crews and get the most effective things done. It was difficult for him to take time off. Yesterday we were just chatting about that kind of thing. He says, it's great. He now knows the system very well, and he's made that full transition from, I don't need a system to tell me what to do. It's going, this is great. The system knows what needs to be done. It's my to-do list. And I just print off the things that need to be done, give them to the crews, and when I'm not here, the work is already lined up for them. So these guys themselves have really come full circle in terms of full resistance in some respect, and now full embracement. That's a long and difficult road,
right?
And the reason that's paid off or has worked is because of that upfront research and that upfront legwork, working with these guys side by side, learning their language, having the software actually be able to accommodate changes in their terminology, so that the system now has terminology that they recognize.
Right.
The system actually now looks like what they wanted it to look like because we've consolidated those processes. They were involved in that, so the system behaves the way they expected to behave. And that really has made big changes for them.
And what about from your standpoint, from a cost savings and cost measurement standpoint? Has the system already started to show how you're able to, in your department, deploy technology that makes sense in a cost-effective and sustainable manner?
It's difficult to measure some of these things, and I know it's certainly in the private sector and a lot of other industries, measurement is everything, and your results are shown by the numbers. In local governments and in governments in general, it's difficult to obtain those numbers all the time, particularly when you're starting from paper systems, which we were. A lot of municipalities are still in paper systems. The numbers just aren't there in terms to prove that a return on investment with any solid numbers. But what we are seeing now is we do now have a very clear understanding of the work, what we call management accounting practices and management accounting information. It's no longer financial based, it's now based on programs. So how much is this program really costing us? What is the resource profile? The other twist on this, everything we do is seasonal, right? So everything is seasonal, it's weather dependent. It's dependent on the amount of rain that happens this year, how fast the frost came and how fast the leaves fell. So everything is very weather dependent, so predictability is very difficult. Having the information from the systems now that give us really good insight into how many people it took, how long it took them, how much overtime was involved, the kinds of equipment that are being used. Those kinds of things now help us look at those profiles and say, how can we better balance our people in order to cover off and get more of these things done, and how to get some of these things done that we haven't been able to do in the last few years with budget cuts and all those kinds of things. We need to be able to recover that. The information we have now in hand puts us in a position to be able to do that.
Now, I know you've shown me the system, but I was wondering, can we go into a demo now where you can show the folks on the call a view of the system and how a day in the life of someone in the city would interact with a citizen with an issue that they would like to document. So maybe we can break to a demo now and we'll come back for questions and answers afterwards.
Sure, that would be great.